Hey, hey, hey. Hello, cultivators of the future. You are currently tuned in to Aster Education. I'm your host, as always, Robert Astwood. And again, we have what's called an inquiry session today. Love it. Here we go. Let's have some fun. Let's find out some new knowledge. Today I have on the show. Well, I was going to introduce you, but hey, you introduced yourself. Go on.
All right, Robert, thanks for having me, and I'm excited about the conversation and wherever it's going to take us. My name is Jason Angell. I am a farmer in the Hudson Valley at Long Haul Farm. I am the director of the Ecological Citizens Project, a nonprofit that works on finding local solutions to global problems, and I am a teacher at Bronx Community College.
Hey, whoop, whoop, BCC.
Yeah, nice. BCC, I love it.
Awesome. All right, so I like to start off. Oh, before we do that, your main research interest, like what are you into? Like, what do you like to study?
So I teach sociology and American government, but I would say my main research interest is how to engage more people in the community work in front of us. So both in my thinking and in my work, constantly thinking about how to reform democracy so people have more real voice and power in it, and how we work with people to unlock their creative potential to better their communities and step outside of their own individual lives.
Awesome. Okay. I have comments, obviously, but we have limited time.
I know you will. I'm sure they'll come up.
Yeah,
I look forward to it.
So I like to start off with this big splash, big think, big juicy question always with all of my inquiry session participants. So what would you say, Jason, is your main life purpose? Why are you here? Why are you on this planet?
Man, that's a big question, Rob.
I told you it was big.
I mean, look, I think there are two parts to that. I think one of them is, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. One of them is how to be as honest publicly as I am in my own private thinking. And by that, I mean, look, in my own mind, I believe in a lot of radical stuff about how we need to kind of evolve ourselves as people and how we need to reorganize society. When I step into a public situation, have I found the authority and bravery to voice those things publicly? And so, I think one purpose is to come to know my true self, and B, bring the distance between my private true self and my public self as close together as possible. And because I do believe as people begin to speak their truths like that, and we kind of come out and we say, yeah, things are messed up, and we got some work to do on it. As more people do that personally, we will start to see the beginning of the sorts of large kind of movements that we need to kind of shift our society and way of life. So I think that's just something I'm thinking about a lot right now, shrinking that distance between the private and the public,
And you know what, Jason, hopefully more people are doing that, having that kind of thought process, because a lot of people are just kind of existing, plodding along, not really having a purpose. So it's like you really trying to actively define, draw the distance between your true self and your public self or your conscious self. I love that. I love that idea. Yeah, we need more people to think like that.
Cool. It's tough work, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I feel like that's why people don't do it, because it doesn't provide immediate results.
Yeah.
And you don't know if it's going to be definite. It's not a guarantee of it too.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, me and you have talked before about education. I know you think a lot about it, but in many ways, I didn't really do that sort of work until I was in my 30s, which sounds crazy, but the work of being what, you go through school and you know what the system wants of you. Then you go out into the work life and you know what's out there. I mean, you're kind of choosing from jobs that you could hopefully get, but you never kind of sit with the blank page and are like, well, what would I, what am I about? If the world was created by me, what would my work go towards? And I just feel like we wait so long to to get people to do that self-guiding work, you know? It's like we're always being guided, and it's like, and to get to the true self, I think you got to do a lot of self work. So anyway, I know we'll touch, I'm sure we'll touch upon that idea, but like, I wish we created space for people in our institutions more to guide themselves and do their own work like that.
Yes, and the self-discovery is essential because, you know, mastery of the self equals mastery of the things around you, and then like more effective interactions with everybody else around you too.
Yeah.
All right, so let me move to the next question because I can really continue this. I love this. This is where we're going. So the first one is going to be on eco-pedagogy. So how do you believe eco-pedagogy should be implemented throughout public schools?
So break it down for me a little bit more. You're talking about how we teach ecology and environmentalism, or give me a little bit more.
Yeah, so like how would you, like, what are some, I guess, learning activities, some sources, some values that you would found that like your class on, and like how would you ensure that coming away from class, students would be like, they're not going to litter, you know, they're not going to even think about littering because like they understand the point of who the world is.
Yeah.
You saw how I said who? Like,
Yeah.
people need to start treating the world like a person, like the world. How can you get people to treat the world like a person?
Okay, man, that's such a good question and good thought. I mean, the first thing I would probably say is that I think when most people think about ecology or the topic of climate change, the phrase that pops into their head is we need to quote unquote save the environment, right? I've got a big problem with that, right? And it's getting at what you said. Like, I think one of the core things to teach people from a young age is that they are not separate from the environment. We are not saving something that's outside of ourselves, right? And so, like, when you said, who is the environment, right? I'm going with that because the environment is us. We are part of the environment. And I think that, especially Western culture. I mean, I think and by that, I mean Western European culture, right? Fueled by capitalism and resource acquisition and colonialism, like has really kind of perpetrated that view of the human as separate from the environment and very different than indigenous cultures. And if we don't start to come home, and by come home I mean come back to being a part of the environment, then there's no way to save it because we're completely missing the boat. We're thinking that we're working to save something outside of ourselves, right? And so I honestly believe that like the topic shouldn't be about people doing things to save nature. Like I as a farmer, not only a teacher, like I recognize that this natural living system is far stronger than humans are, and we need to save ourselves, because if we extinguish the human race, I don't think the planet will be extinguished. I think like in geologic time it will bounce back, and so people, it's just so ego driven, human ego driven, the idea that we need to save the planet. Whereas no, we're talking about saving ourselves, because we are part of the environment. So I would say that's a core thing to begin with. And it's just so fundamental because it's baked into us with this dominant Western viewpoint. And we need to do the work to unlearn that. Like, and it's deep work,
What would be the first step? This is not a written down question, by the way.
Yeah.
What would be the first step to unlearning that?
I mean, look, I did not grow up farming. I got pulled into it middle of my life after working in politics in New York City. I was directing a think tank for the Working Families Party, doing political work, living in the city, and I was just unhappy. It's probably just me individually, and I ended up moving, got married, and moved down to a farm in Argentina for about 2 years, and that's where I learned how to farm. And it was a personal transformation working in nature every day for that amount of time. And, so to answer your question, I think one thing people have to do is become connected with nature again, whether that's working in a garden, going outside, getting into the forest. I mean, we're all in danger of living in a perpetually human built environment all the time, online, and I think we can forget like how much a part of nature humans have been for so long. And so I think you can't, my kids love Star Wars, and there's a saying in Star Wars I think it was like number 6. It was like, you win by protecting the things you love, not destroying the things you hate. And you can't love something unless you get connected to it again. And so I think people have to get reconnected to nature and feel the love from it, and then from that grows the desire to protect it.
And I know there's initiatives and there's classes and there's schools that actually do this. Like they'll have class in like the whole school is situated in nature. It's like in like either like, I don't really know exactly, maybe it's a clearing or maybe it's like some kind of wood reserve, but they'll literally will be right next to it, and then they'll go out and garden. Like that's part of like, that's a class, and then cultivation would be a class, you know what I mean? Like, so that they can actually have that. So it's like, how can we get that to not be an initiative, but to be the foundation?
Yeah, well, that's such a good point. I mean, that comes down to, I mean, I don't know, Robert, if you're ever going to go down, I know you're interested in teaching, I know you're interested in like it, but from a school leadership point of view, right? Like, what do we value the most? And, often school, I mean, it changes, but schools are up against state tests, they're teaching to the test. I mean, what does a school value? If a school values taking kids out of the classroom, out of the building, into the park, into, the upper Bronx, getting to nature, that's a value decision made by a school system. And, I think at some point we need school leaders that are going to do that stuff and say, this is a value to growing good people, like not everybody should be on computers all the time, like in school, like, but that's a fight to be had by school leaders and teachers,
To answer your question, Jason, yes, I do plan on being not only a school leader, but a founder. One of my goals is to open 10 schools founded on what I call HOI curriculum, humanization and organic intelligence. And I love what you just said. You said, hey, we have to take schools, basically rethink them. And like, what are we going to value? Because how people say, oh, like, there's not going to be enough funds for that. There's not going to be enough money. Where are you going to get the money? Are you kidding me? Like, you see the world that we've built now. What did that cause? What did that require? Money. You see all these different initiatives and different things that people are doing now that are progressive. Money.
Yeah.
You see the traditional system that has been set up, the lecture-based system, this neoliberalistic society. If you can do that, if we can found a society on neoliberalistic production, capitalism, whatever, why can't we do the other version? Why can't we do it where, and mind you, I don't think there's a dichotomy. I think we should take the good parts of each thing. But I do think that if we're going to take it, like, that has to be the foundation. It's not going to be like an initiative. So it's like, there's money out there. There's no shortage on money. There's no shortage on success. Like, you can do it. We just need people to shift their values, not shift how much money they're giving,
I agree with you 100%, because like you just said, like, when the money's needed, like whether it's coming up with $1 trillion tax plan that's going to cut taxes for the wealthy, or this COVID stimulus, the money gets found. And so, to your point,
magically,
it's a values thing. It's like enough people demanding that it's important, and that is the long-term work, right? That probably we're all involved in, like shifting people's values, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly why we need to have conversations like these. We attract attention, attract like-minded people. Enough people start kind of getting on this value-driven or value-shifting kind of way, because it's not necessarily. And I love that you said that, like, value shifting. I think I might have to go write that down right now. But yeah, like value shifting. I love that. So value shifting. The reason you should focus on that, because a lot, like, I'm focusing on. Like, I think that education reform should happen via curriculum, but before it could happen, that, like, by the way, it's not going to be any silver bullet, like all one size fits all, like one approach is going to solve it all. Yeah. But I do think curriculum has a very big point, because it determines what's value, it determines what's considered important. Like, curriculum to me is kind of like a culture, a culture of a class or culture of a school.
Yeah.
So, we have to focus on the value first before focusing on the curriculum. So that way we could actually have the goal or the inner drive or the inner energy, thought energy to be pushing forwards for that.
Well, let me ask you a question if I'm allowed to do that, Robert. I mean, like,
Absolutely.
okay, cool. So, like, you know how I was saying, like, you asked me the big question about life purpose, right? And this idea of doing the self work, understanding what you believe in, and then bringing it as close to your public work and profile as possible. I mean, as you were talking about curriculum, that's what I was thinking of. Like, can our educators creating curriculums that they're willing to put forward that reflect their true belief about how we should approach education, because I believe that so much of it's formulaic at this point. Like, I walk down BCC halls and I look through at other professors and what they're teaching, and I'm like, yeah, that's been taught for 30 years, and is it still necessary that we teach that stuff, or is it just kind of like out of habit, and like the idea of teaching a curriculum that truly reflects your like educational values. Like, I don't know how many teachers really do that, to be honest. If they, A, do that work, or B, would have the courage to like,
It's courage too, because I like that second part is courage. Why? Because they're afraid to lose their job, or they're afraid that they are not going to fit into what the school's saying, and then they lose their job. They won't have like a way to make money for themselves, income.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I would say is you can't let money, it starts with money. Like, I'm going to start with money, because when you think about money, it's not there for you to make it. Money's already made. We don't need to make it. So we don't need to stress about it. Like, you should be focusing on like money, because it's going to fuel your goals. Like, money is there to fuel your bigger life purposes. It's a vehicle to get to your mission, your existential thing that you've set for yourself, your life goal, like that's what money is there. It's a vehicle to achieve that, and it's not a goal in itself. So once you get yourself thinking about like that with money, you won't allow money to stop you from achieving what you want, even though you might have to sacrifice some things first to get it. So it goes back to like the values, like what are your values on money? How are you thinking about that? Like, it really and I don't know if I've said this before, but I just recently remembered it, so I'm going to say it now. Yeah. When people like self-teaching or self-education is a really big part about improving, or education in my mind is improvement, is progression, is moving forward. Notice how I never say official schooling, because that's a whole different thing. Like, that's its own thing. Yeah. That's an artificial version of, education. So yeah, I think it has to start with like, how people are viewing money, how people are viewing their value, the world,
Well, that's interesting, because like schooling, like you were saying, like my own personal experience in school is I still remember going to college, and I was in a political science class, and there was a professor I loved. I just loved her as a teacher, and so I took all of the classes she offered. And I just remember her first class, she kind of ran it very like Socratically, just asking questions all the time. Okay. And she said, it was the first time she said, I don't know, she said something like, well, what do you think about this? It was something like that question, but it was like, I almost felt like it shocked me, because like no one had asked me to think through my own opinion on something. I mean, I know but it's just like, this idea of, you said schooling, it's really, you think of learning as kind of self-driven, and it's amazing how much education changes when you find the thing you want to learn to move you forward in your own purpose, and then suddenly you're doing it. It's not like you have to be forced to do it, or you have to do it because you're gonna get tested on it, and it's sad to me to think that, like, again, it's coming back to something we talked about, but that we don't have a better structured way to get individual young people, adults, to zero in on what really drives them, what they're trying to learn. So it's self-driven, because I never got turned on, unless your goal is to be like number one in your class. Like, if you just want to avoid getting bad grades, you can do that. But like, what drives you to do it? What drives you to like go deeper than you would if you were just giving it an assignment,
I'm writing a note right now. I need to create a constructive plan to answer that question.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to, even as a parent, I've got to create a constructive plan to put my own kids in that space. It's like, that is it's got to be one of the most valuable things you can do for a person.
And you know what? Like, and we're nearing toward the end of I try to keep these to 20 minutes. So,
Okay.
but as I'm thinking about this now, I'm thinking about like what I'm doing, because I'll be the first one to tell you I'm going through a mental shift or a mental like kind of elevation right now, like just changing my focus. Like I used to be focused a lot on, and I'll divulge some personal information on pleasure, like just what are things that make me feel good, being comfortable, playing video games or hanging out with people that I like, or just doing like watching, doing things that are not fueling my goal, like my 10x big think goal. What is your life purpose mission? Like, are you feeling that? So my mental shift occurred when I started actually studying the things that I wanted to study. Right now, I'm reading a book called The 10X Rule. I don't know if you're familiar with it. The 10X Rule, it's by Grant Cardone.
Okay.
That book is crazy. I mean, I listened to the audio version because Grant himself actually reads it, and he's kind of like a mentor when he reads it. But long story short, it's saying, what is your main mission? Like, why are you here? Okay, great. Make an action plan for that. And you thought it was going to take one person? You thought it was going to take 3 people to make that happen? Well, guess what? It's going to take 10 times that. It's basically like the kind of so like whatever you do, like if you had to, because right now, like when I can use myself, I've been applying for, as you know, to work in private school.
Yeah.
And I applied the 10X Rule, so it's like I could apply to 7 jobs and wait around.
Yeah.
And then maybe try to get three presentations, and then maybe get 1 close. But the 10X Rule would actually say, all right, great, that's the right idea, but your numbers are just off. You need to talk to 100 people, so that way you'll get like 10 presentations, so that way you'll get maybe 3 offers. So this kind of idea, I feel like, and I'm definitely going to apply this when I start crafting the curriculum and really making this enrichment program that I'm trying to do. It's really crucial. People don't set big enough goals for themselves, is basically what he's saying. And we need to set more massive, big think goals, so that way it'll actually push us to, reach for our full potential. One interesting thing he says is committing, like how strong committing is. Like once you commit to some kind of big, massive action, that actually opens you up to your inner self. He calls it, he doesn't say inner self, he just says your full potential, right?
Okay.
But that's such an interesting idea, right? Like just do more and you get more.
Well, let me add to that, the 10X Rule, right? And so you're talking about this phase of kind of mental elevation, you said, self-exploration. And I remember I had, I had a deep period like that, and maybe it never ends, but a deep period about 10 years ago before we started the farm. And I think what I fell into, I basically fell into this. Here's the analogy I came up with. Like when we're growing up, most people say, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up, right? And they want you to pick one thing. And I struggled with that for a long time. What do I want to be? Do I want to be in politics? Do I want to be in social service? And I was trying to fit myself into that society box of you are one thing and you do it 50 hours a week, and that is you. You are the cog that does this, right? And I wasn't finding happiness nor like drive in that approach. And so when I hit that stage of self-exploration, I came to think about it this way. Have you ever seen any Bruce Lee movies?
I actually haven't. No, I haven't seen any Bruce Lee movies.
Okay, you don't need to know, but there's Bruce Lee I was into when I was young. There's a movie called Enter the Dragon. And in that scene, there's a famous scene where he's in a hall of mirrors, right? Bruce Lee's in a hall of mirrors, and he's surrounded by reflections of himself, and he's battling an enemy, and he can't tell which the real enemy is, and the enemy keeps jumping out, and he's getting cut up, and suddenly Bruce Lee realizes that the only way to find the real enemy is to start punching all of the reflections, all of these mirrors in the funhouse, until he's revealed. And so working on that analogy, I started to just be like, all of these fantasies I carry around in my head of the things I want to do. Like I have Jason the writer in there. I have Jason the teacher, Jason the farmer, Jason the cook, Jason the politician. I'm just going to start doing them, like to your 10 times rule. And so my last 10 years have kind of been about that. Like we started a farm. Like, I got an adjunct teaching job. It's not the full thing I do. I'm not going to get rich on it, but it's an important part of my life. We actually did this supper club where we cook for people, and I'm running for local office right now. I guess my point being that, like, our jobs are to take these ideas of ourselves and experiment with them and try to, like, bring them into reality. And sometimes we'll do them. We'll be like, oh, this is not interesting. Oh, I didn't have this right. That's a dead fantasy. I can finally move on from it. And so I think, again, it's kind of, yeah, like doing that work, experimenting with life, experimenting to find out who you are, what your purpose is. Because I think both of us know, Robert, once you find that purpose, that real purpose of yours, like, there's really nothing that can stop that. Like, there's just, like, people can feel it when they talk to you. So it's like, it's just that hard work of getting to it.
And that is the business of what I'm trying to aim at, like trying to bring that into schools. How can we get students to know, like, to find what they really want to do? I mean, it's going to be hard because they're still young. They have so much time. This is only the very, very beginning of their life. So it's, but what my school would do is really have, and I don't have it concretely figured it out yet, but hey, one of the things is you got to commit first and figure the rest out later. That's when the great ideas come out. So I'm thinking, like, the school would have to have so many options, so many, like, different things, like so many, and let's just think limitlessly for a moment, so many different activities for the students to experiment, like how you said, experiment with, or we go to so many different locations and you can experiment with so many different only jobs or hobbies or activities that you will start to come into contact with what you like or what speaks to you, Take them to the pool table. Let's play some pool. Let's go to the opera. Let's go and let's go have a day at the job at work. Let's go for a run. Like, just natural things. And I know Dewey talks about these kind of things. I've recently watched a video on Dewey, and he has, like, kids doing these kinds of things, learning by doing, buying things at the store. So it's like, I want to offer things like that, but I think one of the things where Dewey kind of gets some pushback with is he kind of is a little bit vague with how to do certain things. So I see what work I got to do. So I'll definitely be like, but one of the things I think are integral, right, to have inside of schools, and I actually just tweeted this, is to have goal setting, like setting goals, but like goals that are just a little bit above your reach. So there's two goals that I like to talk about. So there's one thing I've learned, which is called SMART goals. It just means, like, specific, measurable, achievable. What is the other one? Realistic and timely. I think that's all of them. So that's SMART goals, and then there's 10x goals, like how Grant is talking about. I like this. I like to kind of combine them together because if you think, and mind you, I would in my school, all students and faculty would do these. And they would be their own goals. SMART goals are basically like your action plan that you would do to move you forward toward the 10x goals. The 10x goals are simply there solely to motivate you, to, like, give you that fuel, that drive.
I love it,
and
man.
The action plan is how you're going to actually bring it to fruition.
I love it, Robert, because you're basically giving people permission to think big, and people need that permission sometimes. So I love that, man.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Let me ask you this. There's other questions, but we've kind of filibustered their time period. So let's go through. Go through the ones the last question that I have for you. And I think this question is actually really important. We might have been touching on it, but let's ask it very pointedly. So, as you know, our American education system is wrought with problems. What role can teachers play to help not only resolve these issues, but push our education system to thrive and value personal success and interdependence?
I guess my answer to that would be, I'm going to back into this for a second. I very much believe in participatory democracy, right? That means that you give people real ways to decide what the agenda is for their communities, basically to direct themselves. And I won't talk about, we've done big participatory democracy projects in cities, one in the city of Peekskill, and Peekskill High School, which is predominantly low income, Hispanic, Black, mostly Hispanic. The students were the ones who put forward citywide priorities, and there was a vote. And so, without going into it, I think teachers have to create ways for students to have a meaningful role in directing what they're learning about. Like, I'm taking the participatory democracy model and moving it into the classroom. Like, we're all trained as teachers to kind of use that authority in the class, right? And when I teach, I very quickly learned to try to scramble that authority. And I do that by if someone asks me a question, a student, I say, I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't try to be the expert on everything, because that doesn't give anybody else the room to like participate, or, I say, let's hold one class this semester where you all, put forward what you want the topic of the class to be, and we'll vote on it and we'll do it. So I think that we need to bring into the classroom more ways for students to lead themselves. Because like we've been talking about the whole time, Robert, like if the whole goal is to get students to become self-directed, then we need to build into the institutional practice as teachers and within the classroom ways for them to direct themselves. And so I think thinking about that is really important, how to kind of move away from the command and control model to the kind of the model of the teacher that is creating space for students to lead. And yeah.
Yes, love that. All right, thank you so much, Jason. Looks like we're out of time, but this was a great conversation. I'm actually kind of upset we can't continue, but
it can be continued at another time offline, but I really enjoyed talking to you, Robert.
There'll be other opportunities. I'll have more auditions, more shows. I'm never going to stop. So,
Yeah.
But yes, thank you again, Jason. This was Jason. He's on our show. Hey, give them like a little, what is that word? Outro. Give them an outro line.
Oh, okay. Jason Angell. I'm happy to continue the conversation with Robert. I'm a farmer at Long Haul Farm. I'm the director of the Ecological Citizens Project, and I'm a believer that if we all do the work of finding our purpose and letting people lead themselves, we will build that kind of beloved community that we all want in our hearts, but we haven't found the courage or words to say out loud yet. But it's beginning. So
awesome. Yes, again, thank you. Thank you so much, Jason Angell. All right, I look forward to having you back on the show. All right, cultivators, that is our show. Stay tuned for next episode. I would tell you what we're going to have, but how about I make it a surprise this time, all right? And remember, guys, stay cultivating. Hey, cultivators. Now, normally this is where I would start, playing some music or some kind of fancy outro theme. But hey, to be honest, I was having technical difficulties, so my voice is going to have to do, okay? So check this out. If you like this, tune into Aster Education podcast. And hey, if you feel like it, give me a like and subscribe on my channel. I'd super appreciate it. Oh, also, if you're on the Twitter, give me a follow at Aster_Education. Have any questions, ideas, or just something you want to chat about? Send me an email at aster.educationr1@gmail.com. And remember, stay cultivating.